did the age of Pisces actually begin 220 some odd years after he was born? Or is it possible, since the constellation of Pisces started in 105, we went to, when it touched it, no, here, when it touched the first star, it was 105 BC. If that were so, then when Jesus was born, would have been in this period where it was the beginning of the Piscean age, and the Piscean symbols and everything would be very valid. Otherwise, they were more valid as the Bible was written, and it was more written in after the fact. But it doesn't register. It's just a puzzle. I'm not saying this way or that way. I'm just saying, I look at it, to me, it makes sense. Like, that's an argument for the Piscean age. It's one story. If you're not Christian, that may not mean anything. So, but there's got to be other relations around it. When did the equinox shift to Pisces? So, like, assuming that if you're imposing at 30-degree divisions, 12 30-degree divisions of the zodiac as a sidereal zodiac, you're saying they have to work through the 30 degrees. Otherwise, it's another sign. And I don't think that's exactly so. So that's a description. There's not a lot of material written about this argument. But I'm showing it to you here to see you can have dialogues about these things. So the Piscean age begins. Like, I think 105 BC, Sidereus would say 228. Now it's going on, and we're gone along in it. So if you look at the other chart that we had, oh no, I put it away. We could see how it was coming, how the equinox was at the beginning of this loop in Pisces, just at the fish on the top side of it. That's where the equinox was. So we're going to be looking. We want to see when's the Aquarian age beginning. When's the end of the Piscean age? So to a siderealist, 30 degrees later, when the Pisces age started in 228, and the Aquarian age will begin 2376 AD. You know, so 300 years, so 360 years. It's going to go into sidereal Pisces. So half of the world will be saying, oh, it's the Aquarian age. So a lot of the people are saying, psychics are saying it's the Aquarian age. No, it's not. It's still an age of belief and faith and fighting religions, and it's still a very Piscean time. It's hardly, you would call it the scientific time. That's still to come. But with looking at the equinox, you'll see that this sidereal, it's still well into Pisces. There's still a number of degrees that it's still in the constellation. The spring equinox would still be in the constellation of Pisces. Okay, so this difference between the 0 degrees tropical zodiac and the 0 degrees of the sidereal zodiac is called an ayanamsha, and in India. And once you have that number for any year, you just take a tropical position and you subtract 25 degrees or 26 degrees, and it comes into the sign it's going to be in. Here you don't have to do subtraction because you can just see where it sits. But this is 2376 is when the sidereal or Vedic astrologers will say the age of sidereal Aquarius begins. But if you go now, an interesting thing, it touches the first star in Aquarius before it touches the last star in Pisces. There's a 2-degree overlap or 100-year overlap. But when the spring equinox touches the first star in Aquarius, to me, that's the beginning of the age of Aquarius. It's 2703. Phew. 700 years from now, more or less. We're still a long way away from that Aquarian age. And we're still in the area of Pisces complications, morality, guilt. We're still fishing around. But it'll be the age of Aquarius, and it'll still take another 100 years or so before the age of Pisces actually ends. So this is a very different time frame because Pisces, the constellation, is a much longer age than the regular ages of the sidereal zodiac. Okay. This is the key point. So you had the previous one having the Aquarius age beginning in 2376. I think it's beginning when it touches the first star in Aquarius is 2703. So it's a big difference in terms of interpretation of history of what's going on, what the movement, where civilization is going, all these things, these big ages. And they have big implications. That there's more than one interpretation or more than one date requires some discrimination or some study or some research to look into this. And I like the time when we go back and we look at the time for, when it goes into the constellation of Pisces started at 105 BC, shortly after which, somewhere in that next 100 years, Jesus was born. And his stories of the fish and of being a fisherman, fishers of men, and coming, that prophetic time, the savior time came in, the savior of the world. Up till then, it was like the sacrifice of the ram, the Hebrew things were there, and then the faith of the savior being born was the mythology that came in, or the belief that came in with the Piscean age. Okay, so, and then coincidentally, when the sidereal Pisces began, it was just about the time the Bible was written. I think maybe this is 20 years earlier, but it's about the time the Bible was written. So that's, to me, there's always this funny gap between, there was no real history books, it's just the stories that people written down. There's no real book, and if somebody didn't write it as a personal notes, it wasn't how the record's stored back then. So they compiled the teachings that were there as best they could of the previous couple of hundred years and put them together with the Bible, including certain teachings and leaving out certain teachings. This is a big debate around these times where all the issues of reincarnation taken out of the Bible from other things. So I find there's some validity in all of them, but when you start looking at this level, there's certain ages changing. The implications of what's justified and where we're going and what's happening, where we're coming from, where we're going from, these seem so vital to all of us in terms of like social sense or an evolutionary sense. And this issue of, was Christ born during the Piscean, or was he born in the Aries? And he died 200 years before the Piscean age came. You know, it's interesting puzzles there. Okay, we come back to the 2376 is when the siderealists will say, in India they'll say the age of Aquarius is beginning. But technically, by the star, by the actual measurement, it's not till 2703. Okay, so if you're going to start talking, you're going to have to, this is the argument. These are the drawings. You can win the argument with these drawings, but they're not the most commonly, they're not the most common ideal. It's not what most people are just taking with it. Some people, a lot of people just believe the Aquarian already in the Aquarian age, and it's just a projection. Because it's an actual thing when the equinox touches that star, or when it moves through, it's moving at its own speed. You can't say, oh, it's suddenly 300 years earlier because we're feeling it must be Aquarian now. No, it's not. It's still Piscean beliefs. Okay, so so we had the age of Aquarius beginning 2703, but the age of Pisces doesn't exactly end until 2816, almost 100 years later. Sorry. I can't take this. Yeah, okay. Okay, so here you can see the equinox has moved along that couple degrees, touching the last star in Pisces. That's the end of the Piscean age. So there's about 100 years overlap there between the Piscean and the Aquarian. Now, if you keep the same rulerships for the constellations, like Jupiter ruling Pisces and Saturn ruling Aquarius and Capricorn, it'll be an age from the abundance and the expansion of the Jupiter and the philosophy and mysticism of the Jupiter to the seriousness and the structures and the controls and the regulations and the discipline of the Saturn. So everyone idealizes the age of Aquarius as if it's Uranus, it's all going to be exciting, everybody's going to be free and independent, but most likely the pollution caused during the Piscean age is going to cause an awful lot of controls and discipline being maintained on everyone's life in order to save the planet and keep things running properly. It'd be a much more disciplined or military-like world. And that's, I don't think we're going into areas of, by ages, we're going into areas of more freedom, more knowledge, but then if there's a knowledge, there's not, it's going to be fight, it won't be as supportive of faith. Big concepts. Okay, so when you go along to when does the Aquarian age end? Whoa, there's complications here. There's a whole bunch of things going on. The siderealists will say it ends in 4225 AD. When it ends sidereal Capricorn, it ends sidereal Aquarius and goes into sidereal Capricorn, the 30-degree divisions. But it still hasn't touched the first star in Capricorn. It's still inside the stars of Aquarius. Room to debate. So these processes of these chart forms, you have the degree wheel, the 2-degree wheels, so they're able, one outside wheel shifts, but the inside wheel shifts inside the outer, or we're using the outer on these ones. But when I make the chart forms, I have to make them every 50 years, so it allows for the changing positions of the stars. Okay, so this one's here. This is supposedly the beginning of sidereal Capricorn, end of the Aquarian age, 4225. However, it touches the first star in the goat in 4612. So that's from 42 to 46 is 400 years, 300-400 years later, it touches the first star in the goat, which is, to me, the beginning of the age of Aquarius, of Capricorn, but it's not the end of the age of Aquarius. In sidereal zodiac, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, even there it is, matter of fact. But in nature, the Aquarius goes a lot longer. So Capricorn comes in, and the two of them are overlapping each other for a while until the Aquarian ends and the Capricorn is solid for the last portion of it. So here is the point where the equinox, the tropical equinox touches the last star in Aquarius. It's still in the constellation of, so we're in the Aquarian. This is the end of the Aquarian age, the end of, and the middle of the Capricorn age. We're past the middle of the Capricorn age because they overlapped. But the Aquarian age affects, that's 5448 AD. You know, we're talking 3,400 years, 3,400 more years from now. Hard to imagine, but we're just, these are the timings. This is when this phenomena happens, and this got me rethinking, because there's so many mystical systems that say, here's the overview, and it's happening like this, it's going like this, and they're not lined up to the calendar properly, not exactly. And there's distortions, and those are distortions that affect, well, the rapture is happening now, it's like, and it's not linked up to the calendar, to the calendar of nature as well as it should be. Certainly the difference, people come different opinions, they're sensing it, but knowing the exact standard is a very useful piece of knowledge to know. When you're going to use it, when you're going to be around people that can talk about it, that's a different thing. So the age of Aquarius went in 5448 AD, then, but the age of Capricorn doesn't end until 6028 AD, touches the last star in Capricorn.